How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Hot Takes with Holmes here on Radio Free Radford. My name, as always, is Blake Holmes, and I'm here with my co-host Isaiah Addair. Stick around with us. Today, we're going to have a great show talking about the NBA, NCAA, and the AAF. But of course, as always, if you like what you hear on Radio Free Radford, you want to support the station, then be sure to follow their social media pages. Their Twitter is at Radio Free Raddy, Instagram and Facebook are both Radio Free Radford. Again, Twitter at Radio Free Radford, Radio Free Raddy, Instagram Radio Free Radford. So once again, just like and follow those social media pages to be able to keep up with the great content that comes out on this station and to be able to support the online station that, again, puts out great content each and every single day. So we're going to start like we always do at this time of year with college basketball. Radford, they've slipped a little bit these past couple of weeks. We've had actually a loss to Charleston Southern and then a win against Winthrop, a good win at home against Winthrop, Ed Polite with 22 in that game. But then this past Saturday, we had Hampton, the same team that actually ended up taking the Highlanders to overtime with Carly Jones hit two big shots at the buzzer of both games pretty much in Hampton to win in overtime. This time, they get revenge, 74-71 in the Dedmon Center. Ed Polite still with 23 and 11 in this game, just not enough to beat Hampton. So this upcoming week, they're going to have High Point and they're going to have Campbell. That will round out the regular season. Going into, that's right, it's close to March. We're getting into March Madness, and it'll be the Big South tournament time. Now, we'll look at the standings. Radford's only a game up right now on Campbell after these slips, and so that just makes that last game of the season that much more important. But remember, Winthrop is looming. So if Radford loses their next two games, and Campbell, that means they would hold the tiebreaker over the Highlanders. And Winthrop, the one thing that's going to kill Winthrop right now is that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Radford won both of their meetings against them, so they have the head-to-head advantage over Winthrop. But Campbell, that's the team to look out for. Chris Clements, right now, has them out one game behind. And again, they still have to go on the road to play them for the last game of the season. So both these games are away. Both of these games are going to be tough tests for the Highlanders. Isaiah, do you think that they are able to get a win? Do you think that they're going to be able to kind of rally around each other towards the end of the season and get themselves potentially the number one spot in the Big South, getting the Big South tournament in the Dedmon Center?
I do. I think that the players' minds might be clouded with some things. Right now, I mean, this is part of the semester where things are starting to pick up. Classes starting to get hectic, and I'm sure most colleges are like that. But Radford started so hot, and I think that with their minds being clouded, maybe with class, not saying that class is a bad thing by any means, but there's more to think about now, so there's less focus on basketball than there was at the beginning of the year. But I think Radford rallies. I think they play together and continue to just gel as a team. And if they beat Campbell, though, I'm pretty sure if they go 1-1 and just beat Campbell, they still win, or the way it's looking right now, they would practically lock up the conference. I do think it'll be in the Dedmon, the Big South tournament will. And if they win these last two and win the tournament, might be seeing a pretty decent seed in the tournament, in the NCAA tournament as well.
And again, we talk about it all the time. One of the bad parts of being in the Big South is you almost have to win the conference tournament in order to make the NCAA tournament. Like, that just doesn't happen. No at-large teams get in this type of conference without winning at all. So home court's going to be so important for the Big South Championship. Of course, like I said, Campbell one game back. If Radford were to lose, but they beat Campbell, then that would mean, as of right now, the worst case scenario would be that Campbell and Radford would tie, I believe. If let's say Campbell went 1-1 as well due to that scenario. Radford would finish ahead of them. Now Winthrop, remember, if they tie Radford, they can't outbeat them. They can't outdo them. They can't jump them because of the head-to-head matchup that Radford won earlier this year. They've won 2 against Winthrop this year. So again, Radford, they're in a good spot right now. They just have to win. Honestly, you want to win High Point. Don't get me wrong. You want to win every single game in your schedule, but they have to win at Campbell. That is a must-win game for your entire season, because if you can get home court, we saw what they did in the Big South Championship last year against Liberty, who was no longer in the Big South. So going against tough teams, the Big South teams in the Dedmon Center is going to be so important for the postseason, where we know that Radford plays so well. And so looking at a more national scale, big-time shifts this week. We see Gonzaga take over the number one spot after Duke was beaten handily by UNC. Of course, Zion Williamson only played 33 seconds in the game with a little bit of a knee sprain is what they said, so he'll come back eventually. But Gonzaga at the number 1 spot. Virginia takes over the number 2 spot again at 24-2. Gonzaga 27-2 right now. Number 3 is Duke with that loss to North Carolina going into 24-3. Number 4 is Kentucky 23-4, also suffering a loss this week but not moving. Funnily enough, 23-4 is their record. Number 5 is North Carolina at 22-5. Number 6 is Michigan State at 23-5, and number 7 is Tennessee at 24-3. A team to look out for right now, LSU, now tied for the lead in the SEC with Tennessee and Kentucky at 22-5. So once again, LSU beating both Kentucky and Tennessee this week. Big time wins. Of course, they'll have to play them both again later on in the season, but still, great performances from LSU really led them to big wins, although they didn't come without controversy. We'll get into that in just a minute as well. So, Isaiah, what are your thoughts on the top 5? And do you think there are teams that slid a little too far, teams that rose a little bit too high? What do you think about the top 5 and where it stands?
Well, the first thing I noticed was not in the top 5. It's just that Nevada fell 6 places. Still, they lost, but still 2 losses, fell 6 places. But I will say, what astounds me is Kentucky got 2 first-place votes. Other than that, I would probably flip UNC and Kentucky personally, because UNC's win was huge against Duke, even though Zion wasn't there. I think the top 5, the rankings other than that, are really good. I wouldn't really change anything, especially while Zion Williamson's hurt. But I will say when Zion's there, Duke is still, like, in my opinion, the favorites for the tournament and still the best basketball team in the country. And I would say by large margin when Zion's on the court. And maybe even when he's not. We haven't seen enough of that to make that statement or not.
Here are my thoughts on the top 5. I agree with you, and when it comes to a talent standpoint, you can't show me a team that's better than the Duke Blue Devils. It's just not going to happen with the fabulous freshmen that they have. Zion Williamson has proven he's the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. I don't care who it is. That's going to be. You usually have a question like, well, maybe if it's this team, maybe if it's that team, they'll want potentially to go in a different direction, maybe a fill a teammate. No, I don't care who you are. If you are the number 1 pick in the draft, you're picking Zion Williamson. That's just how it is. Even with this knee injury, he's going to come back. He's going to prove why the Duke Blue Devils, and they should be considered the favorite to win the big dance. But once again, it's not the top 25 is not about in the future. It's about what's going on right now. So Gonzaga at 27-2. I agree with that. I like Gonzaga being on top of the rankings right now, 27-2. Once again, UVA as well deserves a little bit of respect. I like that they are at the number 2 spot, losing only to Duke twice this year. Again, who we just talked about was probably the best team in the country. And Gonzaga beating Duke earlier this year. They are 27-2. Virginia 24-2. I like those top 2. Duke being at the number 3. I don't know if I like UNC all the way up at the 5, rising 3 spots. I also don't like Michigan State. Even though they beat Michigan, they had a tough win in Ann Arbor. I don't know if I like Michigan State being at number 6, but still, they've proven it. They've been a very good basketball team. Same thing with Kentucky. Kentucky has been through a roller coaster season so far this year, and Kentucky being at the number 4 spot, they're playing ridiculous basketball right now. One team, like I said, look out for LSU in this upcoming stretch at the end of the season. Because right now, in this upcoming end of the season, they still have Texas A&M, they still have Alabama, Florida, and Vanderbilt. If they can win those games and they can set themselves up in the SEC tournament, look out, because this team is dangerous right now. Now, real quick, you have another thought?
Can we just talk about Marquette for a second, being in the top 10 right now? What's his name?
It's Marcus Howard.
Marcus Howard? Okay, it's insane to me. Marquette is a team that I personally didn't hear much about until this year, and I'm shook. Honestly, I don't know any other word. Just a top 10 team now. It's crazy. 23-4.
Of course, Marquette also holding some famous alumni, and let's see, we've had Jimmy Butler come from there, Jay Crowder from Marquette. I believe it's Dwayne Wade is also from Marquette as well. So. I host a good alumni from Marquette, and we really haven't seen what that team could be since, I mean, we've seen them at times with Rousey and players like that, but really the last time Marquette was top 10 potential was when Vander Blue was playing for the Golden Eagles. So once again, Marquette back in the top 10. It's been a long time coming, but we're happy to see them back. Now, going to a little bit of controversy. So as I mentioned, LSU taking down Tennessee in Baton Rouge this past week, and it's been due to some digging. Of course, you can't. I am a member of it at times. Vol Twitter is undefeated. You just can't beat it. They went back and through some interesting research, one of the head officials has been found from 5 years ago holding a shirt up of an LSU shirt and saying "Go Tigers." So it sparked a lot of controversy. A lot of fans, not even Tennessee fans, just SEC fans in general. I saw a lot of Kentucky fans talk about, which is weird. Kentucky defending Tennessee, but a lot of people talking about how Anthony Jordan, the main referee, again, the head ref, who they went back and did a little bit of analysis, he called more fouls on Tennessee compared to LSU than the entire officials did at all. Like, no fouls. He called more fouls against Tennessee than the other officials called fouls in total. So does this spark controversy? Is this something the ACC needs to look into, or is this just something that says, too bad, Tennessee, move on? Because, again, I am a little bit on the latter part of, he posted a picture of it. Unless there's more concrete evidence and more comes up in the future and we see this happening again for LSU, it could be just a fluke. But what are your thoughts? Do you think this should be something that the SEC looks into, or potentially says, hey, Anthony, we can't have you officiating LSU games anymore?
Okay, let me make this comparison. Okay, let's say Tom Brady was a. Sorry, Blake was showing me the picture. Okay, so let's say that Tom Brady, being from Michigan, grew up. I'm pretty sure he is from Michigan. I know he went to college in Michigan. Grew up a Detroit Lions fan. Let's just say, grew up a Detroit Lions fan. There's pictures all over his social media, even during college, wearing Detroit Lions gear. And let's say he had a game against the Lions, totally far-fetched because we know the Lions, we know the Patriots. But let's say he had a game in, let's say, the Super Bowl against the Lions. And Tom Brady had the worst game of his career in the Super Bowl. And it's weird because Tom Brady plays well in the Super Bowl and throws like 4 or 5 picks. They lose the game in crazy fashion. Do you investigate that just because Brady was once a Lions fan and he played terrible against them? Now, totally, it's two different things, competitive nature versus your job of officiating a game. Two different scenarios, but I think it warrants an investigation. I would say somewhat. It would warrant somewhat of an investigation, especially if they review and see that he does that every time he officiates LSU games. But this initial instance, yeah, I can see why it could initiate some investigation, some controversy, and I think it's warranted. But to think it's a huge controversy that he needs to lose his job, blah blah, because I know some people I'm sure are saying that I feel like that's unwarranted.
Like I said, I definitely believe I would like to see the SEC say, "Hey, we're going to look into this and just see if there's any other past occurrences." But at the very least, don't make him lose his job. I mean, it's still an SEC official. Just say, even if you wanted to say, "Hey, just don't officiate LSU games anymore." You could go officiate Kentucky. You can go officiate Mississippi State, Alabama, people like that. But we just don't want you doing LSU games anymore. I'm not saying that you should. If you go back and you find more evidence that says he was a hardcore LSU fan throughout his entire life before he became an official, then yes, you go ahead and say that. I'm not saying to say, oh, you posted this one vague picture from 5 years ago, you can no longer be an SEC official. I don't agree with that. A lot of fans were saying that. That's not exact. I'm a Tennessee fan, but I firmly believe a lot of mistakes happen. A foul at the end of the game committed by Grant Williams was absolutely a foul. It's exactly, it was a good call. Put LSU on the line and they iced the game with 2 free throws. But once again, I truly believe that the SEC should look into it a little bit further. They shouldn't take away they shouldn't fire him or anything like that unless and even firing is hardcore. If you find legitimate evidence that says, I was an LSU Tigers fan for my entire life, and even when I was officiating, then just don't let him do LSU games anymore. That's the main thing. But again, LSU, big win this past week as they beat the Vols in Baton Rouge. So that's going to do it for college basketball. We'll go to the AAF now, the Alliance of American Football. This past week, we had in Week 3 the Salt Lake Stallions taking out the Arizona Hotshots 23-15. The Orlando Apollos defeating the Memphis Express 21-17. The Birmingham Iron defeating the Atlanta Legends 28-12, and the San Diego Fleet taking out the San Antonio Commanders by a score of 31-11. So again, high octane fun action in the AAF this week. This is week 3 out of week 8 in the regular season, so we still have a good ways to go in the season. Setting up for next week, we're going to have San Diego and Memphis playing on Saturday, March the 2nd at 4 p.m. Then we have the Orlando Apollos and the Salt Lake City Stallions March 2nd at 8 p.m. Then that Sunday we'll have the San Antonio Commanders playing the Birmingham Iron at 4 p.m. and the Atlanta Legends going to the Arizona Hotshots on March 3rd at 8 p.m. So that's where your weeks stand right now. We'll go to the standings. We still have 2 teams in the AAF that have yet to win a game. We have the Birmingham Iron on top of the Eastern Division, 3-0 right now, along with the Orlando Apollos, who are 3-0. Both teams have been spectacular early on this year. Birmingham with a spectacular defense more than anything. The Atlanta Legends and the Memphis Express both 0-3 in the Eastern Division. Then we go to the West Division. We have the Arizona Hotshots on top at 2-1. The San Diego Fleet are in second at 2-1 as well. The San Antonio Commanders sit at 1-2, and the Salt Lake City Stallions sit at 1-2 as well. So again, this next week we'll see a little bit more variety in the standings. We are still only we're going into week 4. So, what are your thoughts? Of course, we know about the loan that the AAF had to get in order to stay afloat. But still, do you still think this is a good thing? Do you still think this is good action so far in the offseason? And how far do you still think this league can go? And what are your thoughts on it so far?
So, I don't know. I think that there is a lot of potential. I still think there's a lot of potential. Something that I mentioned last week is like during the offseason, if NFL players want to start coming over to the AAF just to play leisurely to make an impact on their prospective teams that they might want to join. As of yesterday, that comment is completely false. No way it's going to happen because majority owner Tom Dundon, NHL team owner, and he now is the majority owner of the AAF after giving them a $250 million loan. He said that his goal is to bring in players that do not have NFL tape. And some exceptions would be guys like Trent Richardson, who were out of the NFL because they were so terrible. But yeah, I think there's potential. I like that it gives younger players opportunity. I think in the future, seeing that Tom Dundon said that he's not trying to compete with the NFL, he just wants to be a developmental league. They said at first they didn't. They kind of wanted to be a developmental league, but kind of not. Now he's saying we want it to be developmental. I think financially the NFL will probably help going forward, like they did with the NFL Europe. And I think it increases the potential because NFL teams are going to start buying in, might see better quality football. If NFL teams start signing players from the AAF, might see higher quality play, more players are already playing hard, but players playing even harder. And then you have gold from football legends like Steve Spurrier. And he said yesterday, they asked him in an interview after the game, what he felt like about being 3-0, being tied for the best conference in the league. And he said, we needed a slap in the face a little bit after beating San Antonio in week 2. He said, I think one of the newspapers, USA Today, said we were the top team in the alliance. He said, well, we're not the top team right now. Our record is, but I don't think we're the best team by any means. And just guys like Steve Spurrier and kind of like taking the NFL mentality of our record may be the best, but we're not the best because we're playing really sloppy right now. We have potential to be even better. I think that is what's going to make the league so much better.
I'm glad you mentioned NFL Europe, actually, because that's a league that not a ton of people really know about. It's almost what the NFL wanted to become their G League of the NBA, in a sense. So what that essentially was, for those who don't know, it was a league in the early 2000s where the NFL put, I believe it was 2 teams in North America, and then I believe it was 4 or 5 or 6 teams in Europe. And it was not known as NFL Europe at the beginning, but they went for a couple of years. It dissolved, but came back with only 6 teams in Europe, so they named it the NFL Europe League. Once again, kind of an obscure league, and it developed some fantastic players. Dante Hall, for example, came from NFL Europe, but a lot of other players as well, Super Bowl winning talent. So again, but that league folded. It just didn't work. So the idea that a lot of people thought was, well, even if the NFL couldn't make a league to coincide with the NFL, would that even work? Would there ever be a league again that works like that? In the AAF, on the other hand, it could be a different story because, one, it's still going to be in the United States. Two, it's something that the NFL can supervise, but they don't exactly run it. So the NFL, whenever they ran NFL Europe in a way, they're making decisions, but they're still mainly looking out for the NFL. The NFL can supervise and say, okay, do what you want with the AAF as long as it doesn't coincide or do anything to the NFL. But if they're not the ones making the decisions, then that means that their decisions may not be clouded. Their mindsets may not be clouded by, oh, but does this do anything to the NFL? No. If it turns out to be okay, they're going to leave it to go. And once again, that's one thing that I love about this league is that it's different from NFL Europe in that it's still going to try to be a developmental league. It's still going to be for players to get a second chance and potentially hone their skills. But it's not going to be run by the NFL so much that a lot of the decisions are going to be avoided necessarily because it would do something to the NFL. I like that idea. I like the freedom that the league has in that sense. And I think that it's a great thing for, once again, teams, the AAF to be able to run their own show but get a little bit of input from the NFL. That's what the dream is as well. Of course, you have teams buying in, making the AAF teams their affiliates. For example, the one that I know mostly is the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Birmingham Iron. They are affiliates. So if there is a player that was a former Steeler that wants to get a second chance, he would go to the Birmingham Iron, of course, if he doesn't have a college team as well. So NFL's already buying in on it. It's only a matter of time, I think, for the NFL truly says, okay, this is what we're considering as our developmental league. Of course, the XFL coming in as well. You're going to have some competition in the upcoming future. But I think I trust the AAF more than Vince McMahon. Just saying. So that's the AAF. Once again, you still have Week 4 coming up, Week 4 out of 8. And then we'll get into the postseason after that. But now we're going to talk NBA basketball. We're getting into that final stretch. Some big-time games being played over the rest of the season. I believe it's right around 20 games left. So still a lot of action here in the final sprint for the postseason and some question marks going in. So we'll talk about the standings in the Eastern Conference. We have the Milwaukee Bucks sitting at 46-14, the Toronto Raptors at 44-17, the Indiana Pacers at 40-21, the Philadelphia 76ers at 39-22, the Boston Celtics at 37-23, the Brooklyn Nets at 32-30, the Detroit Pistons sitting at 29-30, and the Charlotte Hornets at 28-30. Orlando and Miami are on the outside looking in right now. I also want to point out the Boston Celtics. Before we move on to the Western Conference, one, I'm going to ask you what your thoughts on the Eastern Conference are. And two, Kyrie Irving here in a recent interview has just said after losing a questionable game, I believe it's to the Wizards. I'm not entirely sure about that, though. He said that if you give them time to plan for a team in a 7-game series, he still doesn't see a team that can beat them. So my question to you, along with what are your thoughts of the Eastern Conference, is does he have merit? Do you think he's right? And do you think this is a point that he should be saying that? And, of course, they asked him, why do you think that? He said, because I'm here.
Yeah, I think it was valid for him to say that, especially with the core of young talent they have. I wouldn't say he's entirely the reason because they almost competed with the best teams in the Eastern Conference last year without him. So I wouldn't say he's maybe the reason. His talent does not hurt their chances. It significantly increases their chances, I think. But I see 2, maybe 3 teams in the Eastern Conference that will take them to at least 6 games and possibly, take the series. And that's Milwaukee, Toronto, and maybe Philadelphia if they can get things going. So I don't really see a definite, Boston could do it. Boston could compete with every team. But I wouldn't say they would definitely, I wouldn't say that I would take them in a 7-game series against, like, Toronto, for example.
Let me tell you my surprise, the Eastern Conference. Not because they're in any position to make the playoffs, but because I'm surprised they won this many games, even though I don't think they want to win this many games. It's the Atlanta Hawks. They're sitting at 20-41 right now. I don't think they wanted to win games. I'll be completely honest with you. I think they like what Trae Young's doing. Trae Young is being, if it wasn't for Luka Doncic, if he wasn't alive, then Trae Young would be the consensus and probably true front runner for Rookie of the Year. But Luka Doncic is just on another planet right now. But the Atlanta Hawks have a young core. They have Trae Young, John Collins, Taurean Prince. They have a decent team brewing right now. Have a couple of bad contracts they need to get rid of. But the Atlanta Hawks at 20-41, winning that many games, when they, like I said, I don't think they wanted to, is very surprising to me. But looking at the top 8 right now, and I agree with you in Boston. I think that Toronto and Milwaukee are definitely teams that would put them into a big-time competition. Because I don't care what you say, you can't truly stop Giannis Antetokounmpo, and you can't truly stop Kawhi Leonard. It's just not going to happen. I don't care who you put on them, what you do. They're going to find ways to contribute. That's just how it is. So your only hope is to limit that. But the same thing can be said for Kyrie Irving. The same thing can be said for possibly Jason Tatum. We'll have to see how he does in his second postseason. And Jaylen Brown has been one to come up at random times. He's been inconsistent, but whenever they let him play basketball, he's what I like to call my friend who's a Boston fan will hate me for saying this, but he's a lot what Jay Crowder was, in that Jay Crowder for the Boston Celtics would come out and drop 25 in a game, and the next game he drops 4. So once again, to be able to go and have that high, you roll with the punches with a young team like Boston is. So Boston being at the number 5 spot below Philadelphia, who again, I don't think Philadelphia is as good as their record says. I think that their bench is suffering horribly due to that trade. Again, starting 5 rivals in the top 5 are rivals at one of the best top starting 5s in the league. But again, I don't like their bench depth. I don't think that they're doing great. Ben Simmons is trying 3-pointers right now, and that's probably, as we know, it's not his game. And an anonymous NBA player, they asked him how they guarded Ben Simmons. And his response, we don't guard Ben Simmons. We let the 3-point line do it. And it's true. Ben Simmons, in his 2 years as an NBA player now, has yet to make a 3-pointer. So, again, Philadelphia, I don't believe them as much as Boston. But still, to say that there's not a team that can beat them, I don't know if I agree with that statement. Going in the Western Conference, Golden State, of course, who would have expected it, 43-17 right now on top of the West. Number 2 is the Denver Nuggets, a game and a half behind them at 41-18. Number 3 is the Oklahoma City Thunder at 38-21. The Portland Trailblazers at 37-23. The Houston Rockets at 35-25. The Utah Jazz at 33-26. The LA Clippers at 34-28. And the San Antonio Spurs at 33-29. So once again, top 8, tough. The Los Angeles Lakers, 11th now in the Western Conference at 29-31. What are your thoughts? Is it time to hit the panic button? Do you think the Lakers make the playoffs now after, as we said, we know about the situation that we had at the trade deadline?
Dude, Braun's back and they still lost 3 of their last 10, or still only won 3 of their last 10 and lost 2 straight. I don't think they make playoffs. They're only 4 games back right now, it looks like. Or, I'm sorry, they're about 3 games back right now. I don't think they make it just because Minnesota has a fighting chance, I think. The Kings, I think it's crazy. They have a chance right now, but young talented core. De'Aaron Fox has been playing insane. They have a chance. And right now, San Antonio, you can never count San Antonio out of the playoffs. The Clippers started off the season so hot, I wouldn't be surprised if they made a late season push to at least climb another spot or 2. So just the playoff picture right now in the Western Conference is so solid that I could see it being exactly like it is now, same seeding and everything at the end of the year. Maybe Houston going up a seed, maybe not, but I can see it being exactly like it is now at the end of the season.
Of course, every week, 3 Western Conference teams out of the playoffs would be in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. To do that, I like to mention that every single week. It just shows how tough this West is. But I will go ahead and say it. I think the Sacramento Kings have one of the better backcourts, and a top 10 backcourt easy in the NBA, even how young they are. And De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield, they are both spectacular. Buddy Hield, a lethal shooter from deep. De'Aaron Fox, we know about his speed, swiper, as they call him. So Sacramento, a young, interesting team that'll be fun to watch years on out. I think this top 8 out of all the teams I expect to make a slide, though, is the LA Clippers, purely because that hot start they had at the beginning of the season, of course, they did it with Tobias Harris and Boban Marjanovic. Of course, now they're gone. They did get Landry Shamet, who is a good shooter, and they got some other pieces. But for the most part, I believe that the Clippers are going to make a little bit of a slide. They lost to the Denver Nuggets this past week as well. So, but I don't think the Lakers make it because I like the Sacramento Kings' chances right now. I do. I like what they're doing. De'Aaron Fox, again, Buddy Hield, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Willie Cauley-Stein, people like that. That starting five, they're pretty deep of a team. Nemanja Bjelica, I like that team, and I think they can make it. I think the Spurs can make it as well. Once again, I know Bryn Forbes is the starting point guard right now, but still, DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge, give them a chance. Give Greg Popovich a chance. He's going to make the playoffs. So this is the time for the Lakers, and we've seen it his entire career, but more than ever right now, for LeBron James to be denying and to say that, to try to blame other people necessarily for the losses. We know, LeBron, you're doing everything you can. We know that you are probably going to go down as, if you're not already, the greatest basketball player of all time. We know that. But once again, to be able to go, and there's comes a point where a leader just has to take responsibility in a way, and that's a little bit alarming to me. So the Lakers, they have some work to do. I still like the Jazz, and I think whoever gets the Jazz at a lower seed, that's going to be a tough matchup, because I think if you are one of those upper seeds of Golden State, Denver, Oklahoma City, or Portland, the team you want in the first round is probably the Spurs or the Clippers. You don't want the Jazz in the first round. We just know that by now. Unless, again, the only team I think that has a distinct advantage, well, one is Golden State, because it's just how ridiculous they are and how good they are. But Denver has the altitude. That's no secret. Oklahoma City's got the duo. They're going to be tough. And Portland's going to be my little bit of a pretender team, because I don't see them being the number 4 spot. I think Houston may take them over by the end of this season. So that's the standings. I want to ask you also. So we're getting that time where this is a popular thing. Every single game involves a team with a candidate pops up. Who's your MVP at this point in the season? We know the 3 clear-cut contenders right now, and James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Paul George. But who are your thoughts? Who do you think is your MVP in this season?
Sure. I'm not sure. I like Giannis, Harden, like you said, Paul George. And I even like Kawhi Leonard, what he's doing. I have to rule out Kawhi just because DeRozan had Toronto in a similar spot last year. And I personally have to rule out Harden just because he's super talented. But I mean he's out. He missed again with an injury, and Chris Paul led them to a convincing win over the Warriors. I think from when it comes to how valuable a player is from that perspective, I personally think Chris Paul is more valuable to the Texans team than James Harden. James Harden's more talented. It's kind of like the Kevin Durant, Steph Curry situation. Steph is far more valuable. Kevin Durant's way more talented. And I would say the same thing with Harden and CP3. I think CP3 is more valuable. Harden's more talented. I think when it comes to Paul George and Russell Westbrook, the duo in OKC, I think that, if anything, helps Paul George's position. Because without PG, Russ was 7, 8 seed. And now they're the 3rd seed in extremely tough Western Conference. And if some of these games, if he wasn't playing as well as they would probably, honestly, I would say they'd be maybe out of playoffs if they didn't have Paul George right now. And then there's just Giannis Antetokounmpo. If it wasn't for him, I don't know where Milwaukee would be. But they have the best record in the NBA. So I would say it's between Giannis and Paul George for me. I'm leaning more toward Giannis.
Speaking of James Harden, just to mention, his 32-game 30-point streak was finally ended by the Atlanta Hawks. He dropped 28 in that game. Unfortunate, could not quite get to 30, but still he's averaging 36 points per game right now. And it's because of that I think he is a front runner, and I definitely think that I'm about 60-40 in my decision. I think 40% honestly says Harden. My 60% says Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis has the Bucks at 46-14. Who would have thought that the Bucks would be this far ahead in the NBA? We thought we were going to be a playoff team. We thought they were going to be a very good playoff team in the Eastern Conference. No way did we expect them to be 46-14. And Giannis Antetokounmpo, remember, here was a key stat. I actually watched a YouTuber that is known as King of the Fourth Quarter. And basically, he was going through talking about his MVP predictions and things like that. And he pulled up a stat that showed Giannis Antetokounmpo is averaging just under 30 points per game. Of course, James Harden with 36. He's also playing like 6 to 8 minutes less than Harden every single game. Like, the fact that Giannis is doing what he's doing on less playing time shows to me, and again, you take, as like you said, you take James Harden off that team, the Rockets probably still make the playoffs. You take Giannis Antetokounmpo off the Bucks right now, they might be sitting at a 5 seed, a 6 seed, possibly, right now. And it's not like, and like you said, it's not like the Rockets are way up in the Western Conference, or they're 5th in the conference right now. The Bucks are number 1, and that is the main reason. Again, it's not the most talented player. It's not the MTP award, because if that was the case, the award would go to LeBron James and Kevin Durant every single year, and James Harden. It just wouldn't happen. Now, if you ask me last season, absolutely, James Harden deserved to win the MVP. But you're talking this year, I like Giannis after doing a similar story last year, except this time he didn't fall off in the second half. I like Giannis to take home the hardware in the MVP race this year.
Interesting stat right now. When you were talking, got me thinking just about like how I was doing more with less. I would say less personnel and less time. I was like, okay, let's just look at the free throw attempts per game, just because that's always a question when you're talking about James Harden. Giannis is actually averaging 9.1 free throws a game. It's more than I expected to read, actually. James Harden's only averaging 11.5, so not much more when it comes to free throw. But field goal percentage, Giannis he's making 58.1% of his field goals. James Harden, on the other hand, his field goal percentage, 44%. So 14% better when it comes to field goal percentage. You can say 3 points totally factored into that. James Harden takes a lot more three-pointers than Giannis does. But from an efficiency rating, scoring not much less points on even not a significant amount of less free throws, but just more efficient, and he's not wasting possessions with missed shots, chuck shots, less time. Just another reason that I would join the Giannis side.
Yeah, if you ask me a player right now that I hate watching play basketball, it's James Harden. I know he's very good. He's very talented. A lot of things that people say is a travel. It's not really, because James Harden has honed down his dribble moves to the point where he can get away with a step because, again, it's known as a gather step. It's not a loophole necessarily. It's in the rule book, and Harden just exploits it more than other people want to give it credit. So, again, I respect James Harden. I hate watching him play basketball, though. For example, it's clear that I know a 30-point streak. I know a historic run that he was on. You want to keep that going for as long as possible. In a game against the Denver Nuggets, he only had 28 points in the last 2 minutes, but they kept him out there in a 15-point game for him to make a three with 30-some seconds left so he could keep the record. Like, it's very deceiving at times. And like I said, I think he's a fantastic basketball player. At the end of the day, he's a top 5 player in this league. But at the end of the day, I hate watching him play. I hate the foul. Watching Josh Okogie and the defense that he showed on Harden in that clip brought me so much joy, because it's the first time that we've seen someone actually get up at Harden's grill, and there hasn't really been a foul call for it. And it was great defense by Okogie, one of the main reasons that it was a shot clock violation. So I'm not saying I'm biased for Giannis in that sense, because again, I respect James Harden. I think he's a fantastic basketball player, but just the style he plays, to me, once again, does not show him being valuable in my eyes. We'll get away from NBA. Just a little bit of news. We're here in the MLB spring training finally. We're finally at that time of year where baseball is back. And I want to talk about just spring training once again, talk about some of the scores that we've got going on today. A lot of games got postponed due to rain, but we've got, let's see, right now the New York Mets and the Atlanta Braves are playing it, and the Mets are leading 2-1. The Houston Astros and the Miami Marlins are tied at the top of the 6th at 0. The Pittsburgh Pirates and the Minnesota Twins, the Pirates lead 4-2 in the bottom of the 5th. The St. Louis Cardinals are leading the Washington Nationals. Again, Washington awaiting the decision of Bryce Harper, leading them 4-1. The Tampa Bay Rays are currently losing to the Baltimore Orioles 4-1 in the top of the 6th. The Detroit Tigers are beating the New York. I believe there's actually an error because it's saying the Mets are playing twice right now. I'm not sure what's going on there. But, so We talk about the Anaheim Angels and the Oakland Athletics, the Kansas City Royals and the Chicago White Sox, the San Diego Padres and the Milwaukee Brewers, the Giants and the Reds, the Diamondbacks and the Cubs, and that'll do it for the rest of the day. So again, I'm excited for baseball to be back. I know it's not necessarily the most popular sport this day and age, but I'm excited to come back. I'm excited to see some moves. We saw, again, Manny Machado for 10 years, $300 million to go to the San Diego Padres. We'll see if that pays dividends for them in the upcoming season. So once again, spring training is back. So for our last thing of the week, I've been slacking on this lately, but I want to go ahead and bring it back. Your hot take of the week for any sport right now. So what is your most popular topic that you have a good stance on, and your hot take of the week here on Hot Takes with Holmes?
Can you go first while I think about this for a second? Huh.
Sure thing, no problem. So my hot take for the week is in the world of college basketball, and that I know they've lost twice this season to the same team. Don't worry about it. I know they've lost the same. Excuse me, I actually have a phone call. Just a moment. Okay, anyways. So I know they've lost 2 games this year. My hot take for the week is the best team in college basketball is the UVA Cavaliers. Because, don't get me wrong, I like Duke. I think that with Zion on the floor, they are borderline unstoppable. But UVA, Tony Bennett, Kyle Guy, Jerome, they are a fantastic team up and down. I say this every year. They got beat by UMBC last year. Ha, we can make that joke for as long as we want. But UVA is a spectacular basketball team. And if they hadn't lost both times to Duke, then we'd be talking about how they're going to run through the NCAA right now. But instead, we still talk about Duke. We still talk about Gonzaga. We still talk about UNC right now. No one talks about UVA in the ACC anymore, at least not right now. They're talking about Duke and UNC. Going back to the way it used to be, my hot take, UVA has a great shot to win the ACC this year.
My hot take is going to be based on something you said earlier about the Portland Trail Blazers being the biggest pretender in the Western Conference. My hot take is going to be that they maintain a top 5 or a top 4 seed within the Western Conference. And not just that, or let's say top 5, just in case Houston goes on a run. So top 4 seed or top 5 seed within the Western Conference. And in playoffs, the combination of Seth Curry and Damian Lillard proves to be a lethal combination because of Lillard's all-around game and Seth Curry's catch and shoot ability. That's my hot take.
Don't forget about C.J. McCollum as well, and Jake Layman also making an impact at times this year at the small forward position. So I'm not saying, and again, that wasn't meant to be like Portland was going to be bad by any means. Portland's still going to be a tough out. We know they got swept last year by, I believe it was the New Orleans Pelicans that did it last year. But of course, that was with a playoff Rondo. That was with Drew Holiday playing out of his mind, and Anthony Davis. And the Pelicans before they were disarray, figuring out what Anthony Davis is going to do next year. So again. I think that you're right. Portland's going to be a tough out, especially if they play Houston in that first round. That's going to be a fun series to watch, and that's the way it's. If the season ends today, we would get the Golden State Warriors playing the Spurs, the Denver Nuggets playing the Clippers, the Oklahoma City Thunder playing the Jazz, a little bit of a rematch from last year, and the Trailblazers and the Rockets. Out of those series, I'd say 3 out of the top 4 make it to the next round. So, should be looking forward to that in the upcoming end of the season. Again, 20 games left in the regular season. So that is going to do it here on Hot Takes with Holmes here from Radio Free Radford. If you like what you heard today, then be sure to like our Facebook page where we'll update all that goes on here on Hot Takes with Holmes, from little show updates, show times, to whenever our broadcasts are uploaded. And once again, you can find our past broadcasts on YouTube. We're on YouTube. Our channel is Hot Takes with Holmes on both Facebook and YouTube. So again, if you missed part of this broadcast and you want to go back and listen, or you want to go back and listen to some of our older broadcasts, they're all on our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe and like that in our Facebook page again. And if you like what you hear on Radio Free Radford, you like what you hear from us, or just in general, follow those social media pages. Their Twitter is at Radio Free Raddy. Instagram and Facebook are both Radio Free Radford. Be sure to like and follow those social media pages to keep up with some of the great content that gets posted on this station each and every day, just to support the efforts here of the student-run organization. So, with that being said, that's going to do it for us. For my co-host Isaiah Addair, I'm Blake Holmes, and we'll see you next week here on Radio Free Radford.